Lisa Rodriguez was having the worst month of her life when the phone call came. She had just gotten home from another 12-hour shift at the accounting firm, her feet aching in her cheap work shoes. Her tiny apartment felt even smaller than usual, with bills scattered across her kitchen table like fallen leaves. The student loan payment reminder on her phone had been buzzing all day, and she'd been ignoring it. When her phone rang at 8:30 that Tuesday evening, she almost didn't answer. The number looked official, and official calls usually meant bad news. But something made her pick up on the fourth ring. "Is this Lisa Rodriguez?" The voice was professional, with a slight southern accent. "Yes, this is her." "Who's calling?" "Ms. Rodriguez, my name is David Hartwell. I'm an attorney with Hartwell and Associates in Charleston, South Carolina. I have some rather unusual news regarding your family." Lisa's heart skipped. Her family was small, and she didn't know much about her relatives beyond her parents. Her mother had always been secretive about the extended family, changing the subject whenever Lisa asked questions. "What kind of news?" she asked, settling into her worn couch. "Ms. Rodriguez, I'm calling about your great-aunt, Evelyn Blackwood. I'm afraid she passed away 3 weeks ago." Lisa frowned. The name sounded familiar, but she couldn't place it. "I'm sorry, but I don't think I know anyone by that name." "That's understandable. According to my records, you only met her twice as a child. She was your grandmother's sister. Ms. Rodriguez, the reason I'm calling is that Ms. Blackwood has left you something in her will." Lisa's mind raced. She had vague memories of visiting a big old house when she was maybe 7 or 8 years old. There had been a tall woman with gray hair who gave her cookies and showed her around a garden. But that was so long ago she'd almost convinced herself it was a dream. "What did she leave me?" Lisa asked, not daring to hope for much. "Maybe a piece of jewelry or some old furniture?" The lawyer cleared his throat. "Ms. Rodriguez, she left you her entire estate. The Blackwood Mansion and all 15 acres of property." Lisa nearly dropped the phone. "I'm sorry, what?" "The Blackwood Mansion, Ms. Rodriguez. It's a Victorian estate built in 1887. It's been appraised at $2.3 million. The words didn't make sense. Lisa stared at her stack of overdue bills, then at the hole in her apartment carpet where the threads had worn away. People like her didn't inherit mansions. There had to be a mistake. "Are you absolutely sure you have the right person?" she asked. "Quite sure. I have all the documentation here. Your great-aunt was very specific in her instructions. She left detailed information about you, including your current address and place of employment." Lisa felt dizzy. $2.3 million. That was more money than she'd ever dreamed of having. It was enough to pay off her student loans, quit her job, maybe even go back to school like she'd always wanted. "There must be other family members," she said. "Closer relatives who should inherit this. Ms. Blackwood never married and had no children. According to the family tree in her documents, you're her closest living relative. She was quite clear in her will that everything should go to you." Over the next hour, the lawyer explained the details. Lisa would need to come to Charleston to sign papers and take possession of the property. He offered to handle the sale if she wanted to liquidate the estate quickly, mentioning that there were already interested buyers. "The real estate market in that area is very strong," he explained. "You could probably have the sale completed within 60 days and walk away with a substantial sum after taxes and fees." After hanging up, Lisa sat in stunned silence. She called in sick to work the next day and spent hours researching the Blackwood Mansion online. The photos took her breath away. It was like something from a movie, with towers and wraparound porches, stained glass windows, and gardens that looked like they belonged in a fairy tale. The local real estate websites confirmed what the lawyer had said. Properties in that area sold for incredible amounts of money. She found forum discussions about the mansion, with people speculating about why it had been empty for so long and what it might be worth. But as Lisa stared at the photos, something unexpected happened. Instead of seeing dollar signs, she found herself remembering that childhood visit. She remembered running through hallways that seemed to go on forever, and looking out windows that were taller than she was. She remembered feeling like she was in a castle. Her practical side told her to sell immediately. The money would change her life. She could pay off her debts, maybe buy a small house of her own and never worry about money again. But another part of her, a part she didn't usually listen to, whispered something different. What if she kept it? What if she actually moved there and lived in a real mansion? Lisa had never been an impulsive person. She made lists for everything, saved her receipts, and always chose the sensible option. But something about this inheritance felt like fate, like the universe was giving her a chance to have the life she'd never dared to dream about. She requested time off from work and booked a flight to Charleston. She told herself she was just going to see the property before deciding whether to sell it. But deep down, she was already imagining herself walking through those grand halls as the owner, not just a visitor. The flight was the first time Lisa had ever been on a plane. As she watched the clouds below, she felt like she was flying toward a completely different life. The scared, practical part of her mind kept listing all the reasons this was a bad idea. Old houses needed expensive repairs. She didn't know anything about property management. She had a job and responsibilities, but for once Lisa ignored that voice. Instead, she imagined waking up in a mansion, having coffee on a wraparound porch, and never again worrying about whether she could afford groceries and rent in the same month. When the plane landed in Charleston, the humid air hit her like a warm blanket. Everything felt different here. The accents, the pace, even the way the light looked. As her taxi drove through the historic downtown area, with its cobblestone streets and antebellum mansions, Lisa felt like she was entering another world. The lawyer, David Hartwell, met her at his office the next morning. He was a kind man in his 60s who seemed genuinely happy for her good fortune. As they went through the paperwork, he mentioned again that there were buyers interested in the property. "It's a beautiful estate," he said, "but it's quite large for one person. Most people in your situation choose to sell and start fresh with the money." Lisa nodded. But she was already thinking about which room she might use as a bedroom, and whether the kitchen was big enough for the dinner parties she'd never been able to afford to throw. An hour later, she was in a rental car, driving down a winding road toward her inheritance, her heart pounding with excitement and terror in equal measure. The first glimpse of the Blackwood mansion took Lisa's breath away. As her rental car rounded the final curve of the tree-lined driveway, the massive Victorian house rose before her like something from a Gothic novel. 3 stories tall with a tower on one side, wraparound porches, and dozens of windows that seemed to watch her approach. Lisa parked and sat for a moment, just staring. The photos online hadn't captured how imposing the place really was. Ivy climbed the brick walls and the gardens had grown wild over the years, giving everything a mysterious, abandoned feel. But it was hers. This incredible, impossible place actually belonged to her. She grabbed the keys from the lawyer and walked up the front steps. The massive oak door opened with a groan that echoed through the empty halls. Inside, dust particles danced in the afternoon sunlight streaming through stained glass windows. The ceilings were at least 12 feet high and a grand staircase curved up to the second floor like something from a movie set. Furniture sat covered in white sheets, making everything look like sleeping ghosts. Lisa pulled off a few covers, revealing antique pieces that probably cost more than her entire apartment back home. A grandfather clock stood silent in the corner, its hands frozen at 3:17. Room after room revealed more treasures. A library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a dining room with a table that could seat 12 people, a kitchen that was bigger than her entire old apartment. Each space felt frozen in time, as if her great-aunt had just stepped out for a moment and might return any second. That first night, Lisa slept in what had obviously been the master bedroom. She'd found fresh sheets in a linen closet and made up the enormous 4-poster bed. As she lay there in the darkness, the house seemed to come alive around her. Old wood creaked and settled, pipes gurgled somewhere in the walls, and the wind made strange whistling sounds through the tower. But there were other sounds too. Sounds that made Lisa pull the blankets up to her chin and listen hard. Footsteps in the hallway outside her room, slow and deliberate. The soft click of a door closing somewhere downstairs. Once she could have sworn she heard someone walking around in the room above her, even though she'd checked earlier and found only storage space up there. Lisa told herself it was just an old house making old house noises. She'd never lived anywhere built before 1970, so she didn't know what was normal. But sleep didn't come easily that first night or the second or the third. During the day, she explored the town. The people were friendly enough, greeting her with genuine Southern hospitality. At the grocery store, the hardware shop, and the local diner, everyone seemed to know she was the new owner of the Blackwood place. Word traveled fast in small towns. "Such a shame about Miss Evelyn," the waitress at the diner said, refilling Lisa's coffee cup. "She was a lovely woman. Kept to herself mostly, but always polite when she came to town. Had you known her long?" Lisa asked. The waitress paused, a strange look crossing her face. Oh, she'd been around for years. Nice lady, though. Real nice. It was the same everywhere Lisa went. People would mention her great-aunt fondly. But when Lisa tried to ask specific questions about her life or the history of the house, conversations would shift awkwardly. Eyes would look away, and subjects would change to the weather or local news. At the library, Lisa asked about historical records of the mansion. The librarian, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes, seemed nervous as she helped search through old files. Funny thing, the librarian said. We seem to be missing some of the records from that time period. I could have sworn we had more information about the Blackwood family, but I can't seem to locate it right now. After a week of living in the mansion, Lisa decided to do some serious exploring. She'd been staying mostly in a few rooms on the first floor, but the place was enormous. There had to be at least 20 rooms spread across the 3 floors and tower. In the library, she started going through her great-aunt's personal belongings. Most of the books were classics or historical texts, but tucked between 2 volumes of poetry, Lisa found something that made her heart race. It was a leather-bound journal with E. Blackwood embossed on the cover. The first entries were normal enough. Notes about gardening, mentions of trips to town, thoughts about the weather. But as Lisa read deeper into the journal, the entries became stranger and more troubling. Someone was asking questions about the property again today. One entry read, Mrs. Patterson at the post office seemed nervous when she told me. I don't like it. Too many people have been curious lately. Another entry, dated just 6 months before her great-aunt's death, was even more disturbing. They know I'm watching them, and now they're watching me back. I see the same car parked on Maple Street 3 days in a row. Different license plates, but same make and model. I'm not imagining this. The final entries were the most chilling. I have to protect the family's greatest secret, Evelyn had written. The others who must never find out are getting closer. If something happens to me, I pray Lisa will understand. The truth is hidden where we used to count the stars together. Lisa read that last line several times. She had vague memories of looking at stars with an older woman but couldn't place when or where. The journal entries made her great-aunt sound paranoid, but they were written in such careful, clear handwriting that it was hard to dismiss them as the ravings of an unstable mind. Determined to understand more about the house itself, Lisa found what appeared to be the original architectural plans rolled up in a cedar chest. She spread them out on the dining room table and studied them carefully. According to the plans, there should be several rooms that she hadn't found yet, including what looked like a basement level. But Lisa had explored the entire house, or so she thought. She'd been in every room, every closet, every storage space. There was no basement that she could find, and several of the rooms shown on the plan simply didn't exist in the current layout. Curious now, Lisa grabbed a measuring tape she'd found in a tool drawer and started measuring the interior walls against the exterior dimensions of the house. What she discovered made no sense. According to her measurements, there were significant spaces inside the house that were unaccounted for. Spaces that should contain rooms but apparently didn't. In the kitchen, she noticed that one wall seemed unusually thick. When she tapped on it, it sounded hollow in some places and solid in others. The pantry seemed smaller than it should be based on the exterior wall placement. That night, as Lisa lay in bed listening to the familiar creaks and groans of the old house, she heard something new. It sounded like voices, muffled and distant, coming from somewhere below her room. She got up and pressed her ear to the floor, but the sound faded away. Lisa was beginning to realize that the Blackwood mansion held secrets she was only starting to uncover. Her great-aunt's journal entries, the missing rooms, the strange behavior of the townspeople, and now mysterious voices in the night all pointed to something much bigger than a simple inheritance. She had come to Charleston planning to sell the mansion and return to her old life. But now she was determined to discover the truth about what her great-aunt had been so desperate to protect, even if it meant staying in this strange, beautiful, and increasingly mysterious house much longer than she had ever planned. Lisa woke up on her 10th morning at the mansion with a decision. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something important about the house. The architectural plans clearly showed spaces that didn't exist, and her great-aunt's journal entries had become too specific to ignore. After breakfast, she called the local hardware store and asked if they knew any reliable handymen. The owner recommended Robert Bobby Martinez, a local contractor who had done work around town for years. Bobby's honest and reasonable, the store owner said. He'll tell you straight what needs doing and what doesn't. Bobby arrived that afternoon in a well-worn pickup truck. He was a man in his 50s with calloused hands and a friendly demeanor. Lisa explained that she needed help investigating some structural questions about the house. Old houses like this one always have surprises, Bobby said, looking up at the mansion's imposing facade. What kind of questions are we talking about? Lisa showed him the architectural plans and explained about the missing spaces. Bobby studied the drawings carefully, then walked around the house with a measuring tape, comparing the plans to reality. You're absolutely right, he said after an hour of measurements. There's definitely space here that's not accounted for. See this wall here? He tapped the kitchen wall that Lisa had noticed was unusually thick. This should only be about 6 inches thick for a normal interior wall, but it's measuring almost 3 feet. Together, they started examining the kitchen more carefully. The pantry was the obvious place to start, since it sat right against the thick wall. They emptied the shelves and Bobby began tapping along the back wall, listening to the sound. Here, he said, stopping at a section that sounded different from the rest. This part sounds hollow. Lisa ran her hands along the wall, feeling for anything unusual. Near the floor, her fingers found what felt like a small groove in the wood paneling. She pressed on it and nothing happened. But when Bobby helped her push on it while she lifted up, there was a soft click. A section of the wall swung inward, revealing a narrow opening just wide enough for a person to squeeze through. Well, I'll be, Bobby whispered. That's not something you see every day. Lisa grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer and shined it into the opening. Beyond the hidden door was a narrow wooden staircase leading down into darkness. Should we go down? Lisa asked. Bobby hesitated for a moment, then nodded. I've got to admit I'm curious. But let's be careful. These old hidden spaces can be dangerous. Lisa went first, with Bobby right behind her. The stairs creaked under their weight, but they felt solid. After about 20 steps, they reached the bottom and found themselves in a short hallway with a door at the end. The door was unlocked. When Lisa opened it, she couldn't believe what she saw. This isn't what I expected, Bobby said, his voice full of amazement. Instead of a dusty old basement, they were looking at what appeared to be a modern, fully furnished apartment. The walls were painted a clean white, and there was carpet on the floor. A small kitchen sat along one wall, complete with a full-sized refrigerator that was actually running. A comfortable-looking sofa faced a television mounted on the wall. Someone's been living down here, Lisa said, walking into the space. Recently, the apartment wasn't large, but it had everything a person would need. A bedroom with a double bed, a full bathroom with modern fixtures, and even a small office area with a desk and filing cabinets. Bobby walked around the space, shaking his head. The electrical work down here is professional grade. This isn't some makeshift setup. Someone put serious money into this place. Lisa opened the refrigerator and found it stocked with fresh food, milk that wouldn't expire for another week, eggs, fresh vegetables, and several containers of takeout food from restaurants in town. Whoever was staying here hasn't been gone long, she said. The filing cabinets were locked, but Bobby found a toolbox in the apartment's small utility closet and managed to get them open. What they found inside made Lisa's blood run cold. The first cabinet contained hundreds of photographs, all showing the mansion and its grounds from various angles. Some were taken from far away, as if someone had been watching the house from the woods. Others were close-up shots of windows, doors, and even the interior rooms that Lisa had been living in. But most disturbing were the photographs of people. Lisa recognized some of them as townspeople she'd met. The librarian who couldn't find the historical records, the waitress from the diner, the real estate agent who'd been so eager to help her sell the property. This is like surveillance, Bobby said, his voice troubled. Professional surveillance. The second filing cabinet contained documents that were even more confusing. Bank statements for accounts Lisa had never seen, showing regular deposits of large amounts of money. Phone records with numbers that had been called repeatedly, and strangest of all, detailed reports about various people in town, including their daily routines, family members, and personal information. In the third cabinet, Lisa found something that made her hands shake. A thick folder labeled with her own name. Inside were documents about her life that no one should have had. Copies of her college transcripts, employment records, even her medical records from a doctor's visit the previous year. How did they get all this information about me? Lisa asked. Bobby was examining something he'd found on the desk. Lisa, you need to see this. It was a sophisticated computer setup much more advanced than anything Lisa had ever seen. Multiple monitors were connected to what appeared to be a security system. When Bobby managed to get it turned on, they could see live video feeds from cameras positioned all around the mansion and grounds. There are cameras everywhere, Bobby said, pointing at the different video feeds. Front door, back door, all the main rooms, even the driveway and garden areas. But that wasn't all. The system was also connected to cameras throughout the town. Lisa watched in shock as she saw live footage from the main street, the library, the diner, and several other locations she recognized. This is way beyond anything I've ever seen, Bobby said, his voice getting quieter. This is government-level surveillance equipment. Lisa found a logbook next to the computer that detailed when different people had entered and left the property over the past several years. According to the entries, her great-aunt hadn't been the only person with access to the house. Multiple people had keys and had been coming and going regularly, even during the weeks after Evelyn's death and before Lisa arrived. Bobby, I think we need to call the police, Lisa said, but Bobby was already backing toward the door. Lisa, I think I should go. This is way more complicated than I thought it would be. What do you mean? We need to figure out what all this is. Bobby shook his head. I've lived in this town my whole life, and I've never seen anything like this. People don't set up surveillance systems like this for fun. This is serious business, and I don't want any part of it. Despite Lisa's protests, Bobby packed up his tools and left within the hour. Before he drove away, he offered her some advice. Lisa, whatever your great-aunt was involved in, it was big and dangerous. Maybe you should think about selling this place and getting out of town, just like everyone expected you to do. Alone again in the mansion, Lisa went back down to the hidden apartment. She spent the rest of the day going through the files, trying to piece together what she'd discovered. The bank statements showed that Evelyn had been receiving payments of $50,000 every 3 months for the past 15 years. The payments came from something called Federal Protection Services Trust, which sounded official but didn't provide any real information about who was behind it. The surveillance logs showed that people had been visiting the property regularly, always late at night, always staying just a few hours. Some entries simply said package delivered or status report completed. As evening approached, Lisa realized she was no longer just the inheritor of a beautiful old mansion. She was now the owner of what appeared to be some kind of secret operation that had been running for years. Her great-aunt hadn't just been protecting a family secret. She'd been part of something much bigger and more dangerous than Lisa could have ever imagined. After Bobby left, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed. The mansion no longer felt like a mysterious inheritance, it felt like a trap. She kept thinking about all those surveillance cameras, the files with her personal information, and Bobby's frightened reaction to what they'd discovered. That night, Lisa barely slept. Every sound seemed amplified, every shadow looked suspicious. When she finally drifted off around 3 in the morning, she was awakened an hour later by the sound of a car engine outside. She crept to her bedroom window and peered through the curtains. A dark sedan was parked at the end of her driveway, its engine running but its lights off. Lisa watched for 20 minutes, but no one got out of the car. Eventually, it drove away without ever turning on its headlights. The next morning, Lisa decided to drive into town for supplies and to try to think clearly away from the mansion. But as she drove down Main Street, she noticed the same dark sedan parked outside the post office. When she went into the grocery store, she saw it again, this time parked across the street. At the library, Lisa tried to act normal while she researched federal protection services online. But she kept catching the librarian, Mrs. Patterson, watching her with an expression that didn't match her usual friendly demeanor. When Lisa asked to use one of the library's computers, Mrs. Patterson seemed nervous and mentioned that the internet had been acting up all morning. Maybe you'd have better luck at the internet cafe downtown, Mrs. Patterson suggested. But her smile didn't reach her eyes. Lisa thanked her and left. But as she walked to her car, she noticed Mrs. Patterson on the phone, speaking in hushed tones while looking out the window in Lisa's direction. Over the next 3 days, Lisa became certain she was being watched. The same cars appeared wherever she went. A dark sedan, a white pickup truck, and a blue SUV that she'd started recognizing by its dented rear bumper. The drivers were always different. But she began to notice the same faces appearing in different places around town. The waitress from the diner showed up at the hardware store when Lisa was buying batteries for her flashlight. The man who worked at the gas station was having coffee at the library when Lisa stopped by to check her email. The woman who managed the local hotel was in line behind her at the grocery store, buying only a single pack of gum. Each encounter seemed innocent on its own, but together they painted a picture that made Lisa's skin crawl. She was being followed, and the people following her weren't strangers. They were the same friendly townspeople she'd been chatting with for weeks. On Thursday evening, Lisa was in the mansion's kitchen when her phone rang. The caller ID said unknown, but she answered anyway. Hello? Silence. Hello? Is anyone there? She could hear breathing on the other end, but no one spoke. After about 30 seconds, the line went dead. The phone rang again an hour later. Same thing. Silence and breathing, then nothing. By Friday, Lisa's nerves were frayed. She'd been living on coffee and crackers because she was afraid to leave the house, but she was also afraid to stay inside. The surveillance equipment in the basement apartment was still running, and she'd figured out how to access the feeds. She could see people walking past her property at all hours, always just out of clear sight of the cameras, but obviously aware of where the cameras were positioned. That evening, while reviewing her great-aunt's journal again, Lisa noticed something she'd missed before. The entry about counting stars together wasn't the last thing Evelyn had written. On the very last page, in handwriting that looked hurried and shaky, was one final message. They know I found out about the others. I can't trust anyone in town anymore. The key is in the tower, where Lisa and I watched the stars that summer she visited. If something happens to me, she needs to know the truth about why we're really here. The protection was never for us, it was for them. Lisa read the passage several times. The tower. She remembered now. During one of her childhood visits, her great-aunt had taken her up to the mansion's tower room to look at the stars through an old telescope. Lisa had been maybe 8 years old, and it had felt magical to be up so high, looking out over the dark countryside. She hadn't been back to the tower since arriving at the mansion. The door at the bottom of the tower stairs had been locked, and she'd assumed it was just another storage area. Lisa found the old set of skeleton keys that she'd discovered in her great-aunt's desk. The third key she tried opened the tower door. The narrow staircase spiraled up through the dark, and Lisa climbed slowly, her flashlight beam dancing on the stone walls. The tower room was exactly as she remembered it. A small circular space with windows on all sides and the old telescope still positioned near the largest window. But now, as an adult, Lisa could see things she'd missed as a child. Built into the walls were several hidden cabinets, each secured with a different type of lock. Using her great-aunt's keys and some creative problem-solving, Lisa managed to open all of them. What she found inside changed everything she thought she knew about her inheritance. The first cabinet contained official-looking documents with government seals. Lisa's hands shook as she read them. They were federal witness protection records, detailing the relocation and new identities of dozens of people over the past 30 years. Her great-aunt's name was on many of the documents, but not as a protected witness, as a federal marshal in charge of the program. The second cabinet held photographs and files on various people, but these weren't surveillance photos like the ones downstairs. These were official federal documents with photos, fingerprints, and detailed information about people's previous identities before they entered witness protection. Lisa recognized some of the faces. The librarian, Mrs. Patterson, had apparently once been Maria Gonzalez, a key witness in a major organized crime case in Chicago. The friendly waitress from the diner had been Dr. Catherine Wells, who'd testified against a pharmaceutical company involved in illegal drug trials. The most shocking discovery was in the third cabinet. It contained files on her own family, including documents that revealed the truth about her parents' death in what she'd always been told was a car accident. According to these files, her parents had been federal witnesses who'd testified against a crime syndicate. Their deaths hadn't been an accident. They'd been murdered when their location was compromised. But the most devastating revelation was yet to come. In a folder marked with her own name, Lisa found her original birth certificate, school records, and medical files from before she was 8 years old. According to these documents, her real name wasn't Lisa Rodriguez. It was Elena Marchetti, and she'd been placed in witness protection after her parents' murder. Everything she thought she knew about herself was a lie. Her childhood memories, her identity, even her name, all of it had been carefully constructed to hide the truth about who she really was and why she needed protection. As Lisa sat in the tower room, surrounded by the evidence of her great-aunt's secret life and her own hidden past, she finally understood why she'd inherited the mansion. It wasn't because she was the closest living relative. It was because she was the only surviving member of a family that had given everything to help the federal government bring down some of the most dangerous criminals in the country. The mansion wasn't just her inheritance, it was her responsibility. And now, with her great-aunt gone, she was the only one who knew the truth about the dozen or more protected witnesses who called this small southern town home. But Lisa was beginning to realize that some of those witnesses might not be as protected as they thought, and the people she'd been trusting might not be who they claimed to be. Lisa sat in the tower room for hours, trying to process everything she'd learned. Her entire life had been a lie, and now she was responsible for protecting people she barely knew. But as she read deeper into the files, she discovered something that made her blood turn cold. The most recent documents in her great-aunt's files weren't about protecting witnesses. They were about hunting down a traitor within the federal protection program itself. Someone had been selling information about witness locations to the very criminals these people were hiding from. According to Evelyn's notes, at least 3 protected witnesses had been found and killed in the past 2 years. Each time their new identities had been discovered by people who should never have been able to find them. Evelyn had been investigating the leak, and her final entry suggested she'd figured out who was responsible. The last document in the file was a letter addressed to FBI headquarters in Washington. It was dated just 3 days before Evelyn's death, and it named the person she believed was selling witness information. Lisa's hands shook as she read the name. Deputy Marshal James Crawford, the federal agent who was supposed to be in charge of overseeing the entire witness protection program for this region. But that wasn't the most shocking part. Clipped to the letter was a photograph of Crawford meeting with a man Lisa didn't recognize. On the back of the photo, in Evelyn's handwriting, were the words, "Crawford with Vincent Torino, underboss for the Marconi crime family." The family Elena's parents testified against. Lisa's mind raced. Vincent Torino was connected to the crime family that had killed her parents. And Crawford, the man who was supposed to be protecting witnesses, was secretly working with him. Suddenly, everything made sense. Crawford had been selling information about witness locations to the Marconi family. When Evelyn discovered his betrayal, he'd had her killed. And now, by inheriting the mansion and discovering the truth, Lisa had put herself directly in the crosshairs of the same corrupt agent who'd murdered her great-aunt. Lisa was about to leave the tower when she heard a sound that made her freeze. Car doors slamming outside. Multiple vehicles. She crept to one of the tower windows and looked down at the mansion's front yard. 3 black SUVs were parked in her driveway, and several people were getting out. Even in the darkness, Lisa could see they were wearing tactical gear and carrying weapons. These weren't local police or friendly federal agents. These were people who'd come to the mansion for one reason: to make sure Lisa never left alive. Lisa's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Stay where you are. We're coming up to talk." But Lisa had no intention of staying put. She grabbed the most important documents from the tower files and stuffed them into her jacket. Then she remembered something else her great-aunt had written about in her journal. An emergency exit route from the tower that led to the mansion's old dumbwaiter system. Sure enough, behind a panel in the tower wall, Lisa found a narrow shaft with old ropes and pulleys. It was clearly meant to be used as an escape route. Lisa squeezed into the shaft and used the ropes to lower herself down through the walls of the mansion, past the second floor, past the first floor, and into the basement. She emerged from the dumbwaiter in a part of the basement she'd never seen before, far from the hidden apartment. From there, she could hear voices and footsteps upstairs as the intruders searched the mansion room by room. Lisa made her way to the hidden apartment and quickly accessed the surveillance system. On the monitors, she could see armed figures moving through her house, methodically checking every room. But more importantly, she could see their faces clearly for the first time. One of the men was Deputy Marshal James Crawford himself. Lisa recognized him from photos in Evelyn's files. But the others weren't federal agents at all. According to the identification photos she'd seen in the witness protection files, they were members of the Marconi crime family who were supposed to be in prison. Crawford wasn't just selling information to criminals. He was actively working with them to hunt down witnesses and eliminate them. The entire witness protection program in this area had been compromised from the inside. Lisa realized she had two choices. She could try to escape and disappear, hoping to survive on her own. Or she could use what she'd learned to expose Crawford and save the lives of all the innocent people who were still in danger. She chose to fight. Using the mansion's sophisticated communication system, Lisa sent encrypted messages to every contact in her great-aunt's files, FBI supervisors in Washington, other federal marshals, and even some of the protected witnesses in town who she now realized might be able to help. Her message was simple. Deputy Marshal Crawford is working with the Marconi family. He killed Evelyn Blackwood and is planning to eliminate all witnesses. I have proof. The mansion is compromised. Get help immediately. Then Lisa did something that surprised even herself. She activated the mansion's public address system and spoke directly to Crawford and his men, who were still searching the house above her. Crawford, I know you can hear me.
I know you killed my great-aunt, and I know you've been selling witness information to the Marconi family.
But here's something you don't know. I've just sent all the evidence to the FBI, along with the surveillance footage of you and your criminal friends breaking into this house tonight. The footsteps upstairs stopped. Lisa could see on the monitors that Crawford was talking urgently into a radio. You have two choices, Lisa continued. You can try to kill me like you killed Evelyn, but every law enforcement agency in the state already has copies of the evidence. Or you can surrender now and hope they go easy on you for cooperating. What happened next shocked everyone, including Lisa herself. Instead of trying to fight or run, Crawford walked to the mansion's front door and calmly surrendered to the FBI agents who had just arrived on the scene. It turned out that Lisa's great-aunt had been smarter than anyone realized. Before confronting Crawford directly, Evelyn had already sent copies of her evidence to multiple law enforcement agencies, with instructions that the information should be released if anything happened to her. She'd just been waiting for the right moment to spring her trap. Lisa's message had simply triggered the coordinated federal response that Evelyn had already set in motion. Within hours, Crawford and 4 members of the Marconi crime family were in federal custody. The aftermath was overwhelming. Lisa learned that she wasn't just Elena Marchetti, the daughter of murdered witnesses. She was also the heir to a legacy of protection and justice that her great-aunt had spent decades building. The mansion would continue to serve as a safe house, but now it would be run properly, with oversight from federal agents who hadn't been corrupted. The protected witnesses in town would finally be truly safe, and new witnesses would be able to find refuge there. As for Lisa herself, she had a choice to make. She could reclaim her original identity as Elena Marchetti, or she could continue living as Lisa Rodriguez. She could sell the mansion and walk away from all of this, or she could honor her great-aunt's memory by continuing the work of protecting innocent people. 3 months later, Lisa, who had decided to keep the name she'd grown up with, was still living at the Blackwood Mansion. But now she wasn't living there alone. The house had become home to a new generation of people seeking safety,